At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Lisa, welcome to the show.
Dr. Doug, thank you so much for having me. It's my delight to meet you and be here today.
Oh, and I see you have a friend already.
This is Smelly Cat. She loves being in the podcasts.
Oh, that's great. Well, you know, what I find interesting is I've done a little bit of research on this, is that one of the comments that talks about how as we start to discover certain things, it not only shows us what's going on, but it also reflects a potential for healing and so on and so forth. What I'd love for you to do is share with the audience, number one, the name of your book, but also what did you experience in your life that brought you to the point that you're doing this?
Okay. Really good question. So my book title is called The Chiron Effect, Chiron, Healing Our Core Wounds, meaning emotional wounds, through astrology, empathy, and self-forgiveness. And the reason why this work is so important to me and why I am a therapist, from 6 years old, Dr. Doug, my parents remembered me saying, I want to be a psychiatrist. And I've always been so curious about people and what makes us tick, like our habits, our patterns. And I know that our lives are composed of the thoughts that we think every day on repeat that become our beliefs. Those beliefs inform the actions that we take and that we don't take. And I really am inspired to help people expand those parameters, those boundaries that we put upon ourselves, believing we can't or shouldn't. And that's why I really love working with people, to help them heal, because as we heal ourselves, we're able to step more into the life that we really want to have, and life meets us there. I'm wondering what you think about that even.
Well, and you know, as you say that, I'm going to ask you to be real transparent if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Is what I find is that so often we are able to help others because of the actual experiences that we have had in our own lives.
Yes.
And for you, were there certain items or experiences that you had that brought you to the point of being able to do that self-discovery, heal, and move into this direction?
Absolutely, yes. When I was younger, in fourth, fifth grade, I was bullied for being slow. And I remember how painful that was, being the last kid picked to be on, say, the kickball team, and feeling like nobody wanted to play with me. And that was reinforced by, in my family, there was a period of like some really good times. And then my parents just started to not get along. They ended up divorcing, and there was a lot of verbal abuse. There was some domestic violence. There was some physical abuse. And so I felt like my home wasn't safe. And I didn't know those words when I was young or even an adolescent. I just knew when I'd come home, I'd kind of scan the environment to see, like, how are mom and dad? Like, how do I need to show up and be? I know today it's called hypervigilance, when we scan our environment to see if it's safe or not. And so I started to slowly kind of minimize and diminish my likes, needs, and even interest, to just kind of see, how is the family tonight? Like, what do I need to do to try to keep the peace? And what do I need to do for my brother and sister? Not knowing that these things, when you're older, can create some issues for you. Like, you might become a real big people pleaser. You might not know what you even like or want, because you're used to deferring to others as a coping mechanism to just keep things kosher, keep things as peaceful as they can. And I didn't even know that really wasn't even up to me. I thought it was by me doing certain things that pleased my parents that things stayed peaceful, but it wasn't at all. So I really outsourced a lot of my self-esteem and things I had to rebuild when I entered therapy at the young age of 21. And I knew when I entered therapy at 21, this is what I'm going to do with my life, because I knew I had a path to walk, to heal, and yet I wasn't afraid of it because I felt really excited to be able to do this for myself and then help others.
So, how did you come across this concept of Chiron? And explain to the audience what that is.
Sure. So I've been a psychotherapist since 2000 is when I got my license. I started practicing in 1998. So over 25 years now that I've been a therapist. And about 10 years ago, I started to get really frustrated, Dr. Doug, and wondering, why do I have so many successful clients that are experiencing anxiety and depression? And why, after I had been in therapy as a client for 20 years, really self-aware, really like about my own personal growth and development, why was I still feeling anxious and depressed? And 10 years ago, I started meditating as a daily practice. And when I was meditating, I was asking God, I was asking the universe these two questions. Why is this happening with clients and myself? And I just heard this kind of whisper, Chiron, Chiron. And I was not very impressed and I ignored it at first. But I learned enough to know that when there's something meant for you to have information, it's going to keep coming up. And the sooner you answer that call, the easier it's going to be, rather than if you keep ignoring your intuition, ignoring the signposts. They tend to get louder and more dramatic. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to start Googling this Chiron thing. And I learned that Chiron was in Greek mythology a healer. And when you go to the doctor's office in the US and you see the staff of medicine, the snakes wrapped around the staff, that's the staff of Asclepius that Chiron gave to Asclepius. Chiron was his tutor. So Chiron in mythology was the founding father of the healing arts, of pharmacy, of botany, of medicine, of therapy. Chiron is also in our solar system, orbiting between the planets of Saturn and Uranus. And in astronomy, Chiron was given that name to reference the mythological healer. It was the first in its class to have an odd elliptical orbit rather than a round orbit. And third, in astrology, Chiron is a placement in your birth chart. Just like you might know your sun sign is a Leo or Sagittarius or Gemini, this Chiron placement is in your birth chart. And it actually reveals an area of vulnerability in your thought patterns, a thought pattern that we perpetuate that doesn't necessarily serve us. And it's where we tend to encounter emotional and psychological wounding, even sometimes financial issues, relationship issues. And that's when I started to really research and integrate the Chiron astrology into psychology and taking personal responsibility. And I trademarked the word psychoastrology as a result.
Well, and that's wonderful. You know what I find interesting? Obviously, I come from a scientific background. All
Yeah.
right. And you do too, if you're a
Yeah.
psychotherapist. All right. And one of the first questions that came to my mind as I was reviewing things for the podcast today was, how on earth do they come up with these different wounds that Chiron astrology suggests based on your birth chart? And as I researched that out, I found it fascinating because, my first question is, well, is this scientific?
Right.
And it's like, well, no, there's no scientific, but at the same time, as I was researching it out, I discovered that there were a number of people early on that started looking at this that had a number of different clients or patients. And over a period of time, they started to identify some commonality. And ultimately, they were able to pinpoint, based on going back to the Chiron chart, they were able to pinpoint those particular wounds, or whatever you want to call them, imprints, patterns,
Yeah.
whatever that happens
Imprints.
to be, based on that. I found that so fascinating. They say it's not scientific, but yet that's how science works, is you do the research, you do the comparisons, you find the commonality, and you come to the conclusions.
And Dr. Doug, I want to share with you and our audience that I really struggled with this astrology component when I started researching and knew I wanted to write a book, because I was struggling with the issue. Are you telling me that when I was born and the stars being in the sky means that I am X, Y, and Z? I'm a really big believer in free will and taking personal responsibility. And finally, in meditation, it was this huge download. It was like, no, Lisa, You wrote your chart. You chose these aspects and attributes before you came into your physical incarnation that you wanted to explore as a human being. And now that you're here, you do have free will and you do have the ability to learn skills you might not have or know today to change and shape your life. So this isn't dictated to you. It was written by you, kind of how you thought you wanted to explore this planet. And it's absolutely up to all of us to take our twists and turns and choose those experience. How does that land with you?
Well, it does. And in fact, as I was researching, I realized that even Carl Jung, who is
Yeah.
a renowned psychotherapist, used astrology. And again, the way he approached it, which I really appreciated, was not that he's going to predict future events and so forth, but he used it in order to discover that inner self and what was doing it. I happen to do a behavioral analysis that comes up with a similar concept of what's your greatest fear or what's your
Wow.
greatest wound. And
Mhm.
what I did, and you'll love this, is I did my own chart. All right.
Yeah.
I went in and researched it and found it, and I found that it was so similar from what Chiron said versus what my personal behavioral analysis said as far as
Yes.
what is that wound. The other thing that I really love, and I want to get into this more, is Melanie Reinhardt, who I think was one of the beginning people who really researched this out, made a
Yes.
comment, and I think it's important for the audience to understand what this is really all about. She says, Chiron's placement shows us where we are wounded, but also where we have the potential to heal ourselves and to help others heal.
Hmm.
And so it's not just a matter of discovering that personal imprint or those type of discoveries subconsciously, but also by allowing us then to take that and as we overcome it to be able to be a gift to others. So I'd love for you to share how you've helped people and maybe share some examples of people that have experienced some things, how you've used this to help people not only overcome those beliefs, but also to really become.
Yes. I love this question. And many people just like you, Dr. Doug, that are in the the healing arts, you've already been about your self-discovery and personal transformation, that when you learn about your Chiron, it's more of a confirmation that you're on your path, you've been on your path. This lines up with the other modalities that have resonated with you. And it's really kind of like very affirming, I think. And that's been the case for a lot of my clients. I work with a lot of therapists, in fact, in my practice.
Wow.
And it's really been clarifying and affirming for them to know that they've been healing this. And wounding has been the word that we're using. I'm going to also put out here, wounding is on a spectrum. So for some people, it is deep wounding when you've experienced some traumas like sexual abuse and domestic violence and neglect. That's a big wound. For others that haven't experienced that, fortunately, it's more of an ouch. It's more of a ooh, like when this comes up, it's uncomfortable, but it's not necessarily a wound. So be aware of that, because I don't want people to be afraid to learn about their Chiron. It really reveals where we might even feel like we have some low self-esteem, or we might want to hide that part of ourselves. That it might not be outwardly obvious that though on paper we're really successful with the Chiron and Aries placement, inwardly you might feel like you're not good enough, and you keep performing and you keep achieving, hoping to feel better about yourself. But it takes you making that connection that I'm trying to value myself through achievement, rather than, okay, you can achieve all you want, but first and foremost, let's just approve of ourselves and let's give ourselves a break and not be so harsh, for example. So it's really personal discovery. So many of my clients have loved hearing and learning about this to apply it to what they're going through in their lives, to just have a clearer roadmap moving forward.
So, any examples you can share where you had a client come in without obviously using names and the process that you took them through to the point where not only did they discover the wound, overcome it, but then were able to use it as a gift to others?
Yeah, I have actually quite a few very prolific clients that are also podcasters, and they've used the work we've done together to start their podcast, write a book, really be able to offer and serve more in the community and in their world by understanding that there wasn't really anything wrong with them, that they had some natural responses, natural and healthy responses to painful things, and to forgive themselves. My book centers upon self-forgiveness and empathy. So this client in particular, and others, it's really the self-forgiveness piece that sets them free. I think we weren't really taught, Dr. Doug, that forgiveness is for ourselves also. It's not just for others. And that's been really life-changing for the people I work with, to learn to forgive themselves, especially women.
Yeah, and how do they do that? I mean, we talk at certain levels about, well, this is what they need to do, and this is what they need to do, and so forth. But how do you help an individual to learn self-forgiveness? Because that's not real easy.
We can do it right now. There's a beautiful practice that I offer and share with clients when, and all of you listening or watching, think of something right now, in fact, that's a struggle for you, or you really don't feel good about how things turned out. It's like this pain point. And I'm even recalling something in my life where it's been hard to like move on from it, even though it's been several years. Like I've judged myself for it. So something like that. And if you can just kind of even close your eyes and settle into that space you were in when you said or did or showed up in this way that just, feels so painful, uncomfortable for you. And if you can just even put your hands over your heart and speak to that part of you, I'm just so sorry you went through that. And maybe it was a loss. Maybe someone left you, a relationship ended really abruptly. It was painful. I'm just so sorry you went through that, to yourself. Like, to really connect with that part of you and give him, her, them that empathy. I'm just so sorry you went through that. And what do you need from me? And next step is like, what do you need to know from me about that? Like, what do you need to hear? And often it's, and I'm sorry. And if that person isn't in your life to say I'm sorry, so often things happen, a rupture in a relationship, and the appropriate amends aren't made. So you don't need it from that person. You can give it to yourself. I'm just so sorry. And even say to yourself what you wish they would have said to you. And again, you're going to slow this down. I'm rushing through it in the interest of time, but you're going to really slow this down and even write about it. Write what you wanted to hear, what you needed to hear and didn't. And I invite you then to burn that in your sink as a way to release, to really release from yourself this judgment, this pain, this criticism. And I walk clients through doing that with different occurrences in their lives to really let themselves off this hook.
So as we talk about that, what comes to my mind is a client that I had
Yeah.
that we used NLP, and I'm certified in NLP. And
Yeah.
so as we went back and I'm looking at reframing, so I use the word reframing. So in his case, very much I'm not good enough. His experience comes from a childhood experience in school where the teacher was abusive, um, mentally and emotionally, put him in the back of the room, you're stupid
Mm.
type of thing. So it wasn't an event that caused that he was the result or he was the cause of the pain, but rather it was his perception of what was happening. And as we went in and reframed that and he understood that it had nothing to do with him, it had everything to do with the teacher,
Yes.
because he was very bright. But as we went through that, how do you work with that? And what's the differentiation between our perceived limiting beliefs, which I believe have a lot to do with perception as a young
Hmm.
child, versus the actual wounds that may occur to us that we need to forgive ourselves for, or maybe forgive others.
Yes. And I think I hear you talk about, on one hand, there's the reframing, using our mind, using our intellect and our intelligence to see other possibilities besides the one that we decided was true. And that is a necessary step in healing. I think often before people can get there, they need to just feel attuned to and really just feel like, I'm just sorry you went through that. And often that person isn't here anymore. Like in the when it pertains to this client. It was when he was younger. So the people aren't here the teacher isn't here to make the amends. So I think the reframe is excellent, as well as if that ever comes up again and it starts to release, it's like the volume of a stereo turns down of these triggers. It's less intense, it's of shorter duration, that I'm sure over time now, if this comes up for him, it's turned way down than what it was before. And I think with men, different than women as well. I don't work with everyone the same. Like everyone resonates with different things. So I would work with him, for example, I think much like you did, and ask, like, is there any part of you that feels like you really need like an amends to that younger boy that you were, that younger child, like to really connect with him, and only the client knows that, if that would be helpful or not.
Well, but how important would it be for him to forgive her?
Oh, I'm not talking about, actually, see, that's where people get really mixed up. They think all this forgiveness is for others. And what I'm really talking about here, like, forget the teacher and the forgiveness. This is, for him, for you, like that can come later. And I think the forgiving of others, we rush through it too fast, almost fearing like if I don't, something bad's going to happen, rather than really taking our time to forgive, say, that teacher. I think it would take some real growth and him to really feel solid again. Like, I am not wounded by this. Like, actually, like, I'm not shaken by it. And this teacher clearly had some mental health problems, serious issues going on, to maybe just even that's enough. Like, forgiveness doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, I'm so sorry this person was that unhealthy, and but just to even have it not feel so powerful. So I think forgiveness is in layers, I talk about in my book, even.
Okay, so sometimes it's just awareness, as you
Yeah,
say, it's just
that's
awareness. So
enough.
forgiveness is one element. What are some of the other elements you talk about in your book?
I talk about empathy and self-empathy, and really, again, this attunement to ourselves. When you grow up in a healthy family, your caretakers attune to you appropriately. When you fall and skin your knee, they're right there on the ground. Come on, let me get you up, let me clean you up. However, that doesn't happen a lot of the time with every situation. And many people grow up having navigated really big things, a parent dying, and no one thinks to pull the child aside and be like, how are you? Because they're in so much grief themselves. And you just kind of grow up and time moves on, and all of a sudden you're adult, but all these things have happened and they never really feel like they've been healed or resolved. So that's where the self-attunement, really being empathetic towards yourself, understanding how some of your experiences are influencing you today, like the personal responsibility piece, and what you want to do about it. If there's anything you feel like you really want to address and work on from your past, so that you're showing up really authentically, being kind, being yourself, not hurting others like you were hurt. So my book addresses all of those aspects as well, of who do you want to be now that you have this awareness that there could be some things to heal.
Okay, so you have your core wound, you recognize that, and then the process is number one, to forgive yourself if for whatever that happens to be, have that empathy. What else is there? What are the steps that your clients will take to actually
Yeah.
get to the point where not only have they overcome that, but now they have discovered that, oh, here's a gift that because of this, I have become and I can become, maybe they haven't necessarily, but they can, and realize that here's a way that I can now take that experience and rather become the victim of it, I can become empowered by it.
Yes, it is so individualized. So there are 12 placements of Chiron in the 12 signs, Aries all the way through Pisces. So for every single one of these placements, all 12, I give 5 to 6 affirmations tailored specifically for your Chiron, for your experience that you are wanting to heal, to strengthen and support, as well as I give 3 to 6 takeaway steps that pertain specifically to this vulnerability slash up to and including a wound. It's a vulnerability for some, it's a wound for others. So it's really specific on what I suggest. And I spent 3.5 years writing and researching. So I experienced all 12 of these placements to really tune into what do people need to know and do, so you can take a chapter and start today changing behaviors and thoughts based on
Okay.
what's in here.
So my Chiron is in Scorpio in the first house.
Okay. Yes, I have it open to Chiron in Scorpio. So
Okay.
here we are. It's open right there. So this has to do with the wounding in the experience of power. And it's in your first house of personal identity, of self identity. So something not obvious to anyone else but you. And so some affirmations for you would center around using your power for goodness. And also your trust somehow was disrupted along the way, learning who and where you can trust, who's safe. That might have been something that was challenging for you, Dr. Doug, learning about trust and even believing that things are going to work out. You see injustice, like it really stands out to you, and to know that there's good people. I believe you're one of them. I feel your energy. I feel like you're also like a really strong and powerful man. So for you with this Chiron in Scorpio, you enjoy being generous, and it's looking for opportunities to volunteer, to assist, to help. That's something that's really meaningful for you. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, and as I read, really the ability to help others and so on and so forth. That is so accurate. And
Yes.
I was fascinated as I got into that and recognized that. So for you, where's yours?
Oh, it was so the Chiron in Aries, this in my first house as well, and my personal identity. I've always been achievement oriented because I really love it. It makes me excited and happy to accomplish goals that serve others and our world. Yet I never felt like I was good enough doing it. It was this very weird disconnection for so many years until I understood my healing is to really, whenever I'm feeling less than or not enough, it's like, so how are you overperforming? Like, can you please take like sit down, everything's all right, like you're doing more than enough. To really comfort myself, go for a hike, like do something that's not always about like some kind of work thing that's bettering something or someone. To really like be gentle with myself, like smell the roses literally, and enjoy myself more and
So
praise myself.
what are the affirmations for you?
Let me see. Let me look and see.
And then I'll have you
Um,
give me the affirmations for me. And there's a reason for
sure,
this.
absolutely. Let's see. Chiron and Aries affirmations are: I own my right to exist. My value lies within. That was a big one for me. I am enough. I actually am enough, and I am worthy. And that's so important for those of you that overperform and feel like it's based in doing more. It's knowing you're worthy and enough right now.
Okay, and then Scorpio.
Yes. Let's see. The Scorpio affirmations, they're different. They're about, I use my power for goodness, because there is the possibility of a Chiron and Scorpio person that's not aligned, that's not, really in their self-awareness, that they could use their power to hurt others. So the affirmation is, I use my power for goodness. I'm learning to trust. I am safe. Everything is always working out for me, and I am generous and kind.
Well, and I love the words I am. And as we get theologically into that whole thing,
I
when
am
I am the great I am.
the great I am. Yes.
And as we look at that, and I look at that and realize, what? Here's a teaching that most of us miss is it's not that we have to do this, do this, do this, but we become. And as we become, then we naturally do things. And let's talk about affirmations, because there's so many concepts about affirmations. You put them up on a board in front of you or whatever that happens to be. But scientifically, and we're going to get into that a little bit, when we talk about affirmations, we talk about meditation. What, in your opinion, what do affirmations do for an individual from a standpoint of changing their mindset and actually changing those neurological pathways in their brain.
For an affirmation to truly change your subconscious mind and upgrade it, it has to be an affirmation. I baby step it progressively. It's hard to just start saying, I'm rich when there's no money in your bank account. So a better start would be things like looking for the abundance that does surround you. I'm going to look for the abundance that's in my life, and even noticing I'm noticing the abundance that I have, and feeling the feeling of abundance, and baby stepping, show me. And I really draw in what people believe spiritually, like, God, show me that I am abundant. Show me that you are providing for me. Show me that I can, and I'm going to be rich. Like, show me. And it's in that way the affirmation really has some traction in our subconscious mind to start shifting what we believed, and then different things show up, new opportunities show up. How do you see that?
Well, as you're talking about that, what comes to my mind is the word gratitude. And as we start to really look at, and I don't like the concept of money. Yeah, I just don't. But
Yeah, we can use another one.
yeah, but from the concept of gratitude, and as you said, the gratitude for the abundance that I have, living here in Thailand, one of the things that has just really struck me is culturally. I mean, people here are maybe in US dollars, the average person makes maybe, five, two, three, $400 a month. And
Okay.
they live on that. And what fascinates me is they're happy. At least they appear to be on the outside, and they're friendly, they're kind, and so forth. And I think that as we start to recognize that abundance that we have been given, even if it's small, and then I love how you talk about writing it down, that literally we start to appreciate our life and change our perspective of our life and recognize that, there's so many things to be grateful for.
Dr. Doug, there are. And I think an important step is to really act authentically, be happy with where we are and what we have, to really appreciate, to really see how blessed, to see whatever, and stop comparing, and really tune in to the abundance. Like, I love taking walks, and the flowers, the grass in Santa Monica. I went to the beach yesterday here in California. It's like the abundance of sand, like, it's everywhere in nature, abundance that's just beaming around. And when you really start to feel that, it soothes, it harmonizes us with something bigger and greater that then does allow us to change our lives.
Well, and I love the nature thing. I try to walk at least 2 to 3 times a week, and walking around and just looking at the rice fields and the lakes and just the nature that is not necessarily everywhere, but I found a place to walk where I see that, and to appreciate the nature and to recognize that, what an abundance in our lives to be able to recognize that here's this creation of beauty and of nature, and that it exists there to help us to feel better.
And I love Thailand. When I was there, people were so kind, so nice, like you said, happiness. And it was just like really life changing to go. And when I was lost, somebody would take me to where I needed to be, just really going out of their way, but they didn't think a thing about it. It was like their natural impulse to, like, see I was an American, obviously lost, looking at a map or whatever, and like ask and try to communicate, even to help. It was like wonderful that people would take their time to do that. I think we have a lot to learn in America about kindness and generosity, and just pausing to take some time out for someone else instead of
Yeah.
rushing to the next thing.
It's amazing as I walk in, if I'm shopping, if I'm walking into a store, um, and I'm going, okay, and I have to show them a picture because I don't speak Thai. So I'm saying, all right, here's what I'm looking for. And that individual literally walks me all the way through all of the aisles and then introduces me to the person who happens to be in charge of that area. And then they sit there and they stay there to make sure that I'm able to find what I can find, what I need to find. So
That's awesome.
it's fascinating. So we've got the forgiveness, we've got the empathy, we've got the affirmations, Anything else in your book?
You know, I do talk about gratitude. Like you were saying, it's so important. It's for me a daily thing. I start my day with gratitude. I end my day with gratitude. There's so much to appreciate when we really have eyes for that.
So, any specific examples of someone who literally was self-sabotaging because of those wounds, and ultimately, with your help, you were able to guide them through that process to where they came out on the other end, really
Yeah,
experiencing life in a positive way. Can you share a specific example and step
yeah.
by
A
step?
female client that comes to mind was self-harming, like cutting herself horribly. It was so scary. The cutting and damage physically she was doing to her body, and because of self-loathing and just like hating herself and not having any other way to express. And it was several years, and working with her, she was able to completely stop doing that to herself and became involved with animals, and then became a teacher. And like she emailed me years later just thanking me, and it was like amazing to hear from her about how good her life was flowing, how much she appreciated my patience, and just not being afraid of what she was doing. That a lot of therapists even get afraid when there's something like self-harm happening, and she just had really loves her life. And it was like, wow, like that's why I do this, to know like a life, and like generations are changed by what we do and by what you do. Even someone listening and watching, the kindness that you speak and show, it affects people in profoundly positive ways.
Well, it does. And you know what fascinates me is so often, you're fortunate because you get feedback from your clients. So often I think, excuse me, as as we seek to touch the lives of others and recognizing that, it's just about the one. It's not about the masses. It's just about the
Hmm.
one. We don't always get that feedback of what we happen to do, whether it was a smile or whether it was just something that we did for another individual that literally changed their lives. And we don't often get
Yes.
that feedback that that's what happened, and yet it happens.
Yeah, it does. So to keep taking your time with others, and as you feel led, we all have an intuition, to honor your intuition and do what it directs you to do, even if it doesn't make any logical sense, to trust.
Okay, so let's talk about those affirmations again, and let's talk about the neurological pathways.
Okay.
What happens if you've done, and I'm sure you've studied this, what happens when someone is experiencing those wounds and continuing to experience it? What happens? Because what's occurred is they have developed neurological pathways that is literally a habit. This is how I am. And what happens when you start to use those affirmations in a way that it starts to change those neurological pathways and set aside some of the negative ones and start to develop the positive ones? How does that occur?
Well, it occurs first and foremost because it's about healing the disruption that happened. That when people have these beliefs about themselves that are harsh, critical, and just awful, it's because something's happened in their lives, that we aren't born thinking these thoughts. Another human being 99% of the time has said something, done something that disrupted your sense of trust and safety in the world. So before we're speaking affirmations, we're doing some deep healing work around, what happened and what meaning did you make of yourself when this happened? And once they're able to fully, release any feelings they might not have been able to share with others at the time, it's like, okay, what if, let's look at this. The reframe is so important. Like, let's look at this in some other possibilities. And like, might it be that you were always good enough, but this person was really wounded and damaged, and they hurt you because they were wounded, not because you're not valuable? And like, how do you want to believe about yourself, instead of being like, I'm not worthy or valuable? Like, how do you want to feel? And I'll have clients write down statements. I write it down with them, so I have a copy, they have a copy, and we'll make, like, say 3 to 5 to keep it manageable, like how you'd really like to believe about yourself. And I encourage people then to take those statements and put it on a sticky note and keep it in their wallet. Like I have some in mine, so that you're encountering it. So your subconscious mind is encountering these statements of new beliefs you want to feel about yourself and about life, and it gradually starts to get some traction again as you're continuing to maybe make some changes. Maybe you need to heal an addiction. Maybe you need to stop talking to someone that's not treating you well, or maybe you need to go hang out with some people that love you that have been reaching out that you haven't answered their text or calls. So it's the thought and the affirmation along with the new behaviors and healing oneself, like all together.
And how does meditation fit into all of this?
Well, or do you meditate, Dr.
Oh,
Doug?
yes. Oh, yes.
Yes. It took me, I really believe in 2-week experiments. So 10 years ago, I just simply did a 2-week experiment. I'm going to meditate every morning. I'm going to start with 5 minutes. And in 2 weeks, if I don't feel anything different, I never have to do it again. But I feel like I knew I could show up for 2 weeks each morning. I believe most people can when you really prioritize something that's important to you. So for 2 weeks, I just would meditate for 5 minutes. And by the end of 2 weeks, it had become 15 minutes. And I was doing a mix of silent meditations and guided YouTube meditations. And I felt so much happier, so much just richer emotionally in my ability to access my range of emotions. Like I just felt like I'm changing, and I'm just going to keep doing this. Like the evidence of my experience showed me that this is valuable. And I encourage you to try a meditation. There's so many ways. You can do a walking meditation, listening to some soft music. You can do a YouTube guided meditation for 4 or 5 minutes. You can go somewhere, participate in group meditation, and just see.
And it's amazing what comes up. I mean, you experienced it with the Chiron. It's amazing in my experience and others that I've interviewed that through meditation, all of a sudden these items come up. And as you become aware of that, it allows you then, if it happens to be a, self-sabotaging belief, you recognize, wow, that's there. And you're able to start to set it aside. Or as you say, sometimes just meditating to experience that peace and happiness and joy in our lives. Yes, to me, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's worth trying if someone's listening or watching and they haven't.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it helped me to go to some group meditations, Dr. Doug, as well. Really learn with others to really like dive into this and see what works for you.
And different things. For me, it's walking meditation.
Yeah.
And it goes on for an hour sometimes. So
Me too. I love walking meditation. Like
yeah.
it's my thing.
Yeah,
too.
I love it. I love it. So anyway, as we get to the end, how do people find your book?
It's on Amazon. It's at barnesandnoble.com. You can just Google Lisa Tahir, my name, and it will come up, or the title of the book. It's on walmart.com, and I'm the audio voice on the Audible, the audio book. It's my voice. So it's also available that way and on Kindle.
And how do people find you if they want some help?
Thank you, Dr. Doug. You can find me. You can Google my name. Again, Lisa Tahir, Tahir. My website is NOLA Therapy, NOLATHERAPY.com. And it stands for New Orleans, Los Angeles Therapy, the 2 places that I live. And that's my Instagram, NOLA Therapy.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And as a closing thought, what would you want to share with the audience?
What came up a moment ago, it was not planned, is this notion around being happy over being right. And it's a time we're living in. I think people are trying to be right, feeling like somehow that's going to change minds. And I invite you instead to invite in what your happiness is. Ask, what is my happiness today? And notice what you're led to do, to say, to experience. And do that every week as much as you can. What is my happiness instead of being right?
I love it. Lisa, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Doug. You're awesome.
Well, and so are you. I appreciate it so much. Folks, please go get that book. I've gone through it a bit and it is just fascinating. And again, here's a fascinating approach that might change your lives. So again, Lisa, thank you so much for making a difference in other people's lives.
Thank you, Dr. Doug. You as well.
Thank you. Dr. Doug saying namaste.